So how do we become more like them? I mean, what? So I guess that's the question. Like, so we've had this idea of the things that get us excited and jazzed. We kind of know where it's going, how to get various populations involved. But how do we get to 2020, where we want to be, where we kind of dreamed we might be? Is there a kick in the pants that we need? Is there something that needs to happen to make that happen? And it may not be a simple one answer, but I'd love to hear from all of you about what we need to do to keep this momentum going.
I'll start by saying patient empowerment, the consumerism trend. 4 days ago, last Thursday, the FDA ONC working with HHS finally passed a regulation that said citizens have a right to access their lab test. They don't have to go through doctors. This is something that you pay for, you'll be sued if you don't pay for it, and you have no right to see it. It's nuts. There's no other quality like that. So why shouldn't citizens be able to allow to order their own lab tests? Why do I have to go to a doctor? If I want to get an A1C or a mammography, as long as the test is probably not harmful, as long as I'm not, I better not order my own cardiac cath, but as long as I'm ordering a test that's relatively simple, easy, straightforward, if you want to actually drive the price down, put it into the consumer market. You'll see prices of glucoses going from $50 to like 50 cents. And people can self-order, self-regulate, let them order imaging studies. You don't have to pay for it. If the doctor didn't order it, I wouldn't expect United to want to pay for it, because they might have ordered it because they're the worried well. But let me use the worried well to drive down the price and drive down the cost, and you'll learn. You won't keep ordering the mammography. You won't keep wasting your money. But let's give control more and more to consumers. I think that's the fundamental thing. It's your data. Open Charts has shown dramatic changes in patient satisfaction, med compliance. Let's give patients data. Let's give it to them routinely. Let's not make it an exception. Let's empower them to, as I said, order their own tests and their own images, as long as it's not harmful.
Great, thank you.
My only addition to that would be, let's make sure that as we're giving them data, they're giving them well-interpreted data, which is actually contextually relevant and contextually accurate. What we don't want is the worried well to get something that's out of context and suddenly go and
That's why
have a problem.
23andMe went out of business, right? Because you're giving them data that couldn't be interpreted properly.
I can't tell you how many times I've sat you mentioned the user experience kind of testing, sitting with consumers that are looking at a MyChart kind of an instance and saying, I have no idea what that reading means. I have no idea what it means, but if I could understand context, I'd be willing to go out and try and solve whatever that challenge is, or even if it is bad. So I think being able to give them contextually relevant kind of data, open up the consumer model to be able to score, you mentioned the Medicare starring models, being able to actually score and do multidimensional scoring of physicians and the care models around them. I think that will change the model dramatically for the consumer, and it will continue to push the industry.
I think in terms of what's the kick in the pants, I actually think it'll be a bunch of small evolutions rather than a big revolution. And I think that's the way we're wired for healthcare in this country, mentally, in terms of what we expect from healthcare. We are all extremely conservative. And I think your point about the FDA regulations and things like that, I mean, again, our points of view might be slightly different here. But I mean, the FDA gave out regulations on the mHealth applications last year, which I thought were balanced. I didn't think were overreach. I mean, obviously, some senators disagree with that. There's a Software Act and Protect Act, these two pieces of legislation that are in Congress, which basically wants to take this mHealth completely out of the purview of FDA's regulations. Right now, I worry about, are you going to have titration algorithms that actually are not reviewed by the FDA? I actually worry about whatever the opposite of a kick in the pants is, in terms of a negative trigger, right? Which is, we have some big problem of often, a titration algorithm that titrates radiation therapy or titrates insulin therapy or something like that, and something bad happens. Will that actually hurt us, hurt this evolution rather than help us?
Any final thoughts?
I think we also have to have a national conversation about privacy. What's interesting is that we have a lot of regulations about at what point does your own personal data become HIPAA data. It's fascinating. You go on Facebook and people are sharing everything, and yet at one point when it touches healthcare, then it has all these new rules and regulations that don't make a lot of sense, So, and certainly, I mean, when we want privacy, we want it, but I'm just impressed by how many people say they're okay. You know, or if I send you my weight, you don't have to, I mean, obviously you're not going to go tell everybody, I mean, so it's this, and at what point in the interface, and the issue that, why that becomes issue is when, you know, our innovators are coming up with the latest and greatest gadget that actually might be a game changer, if we don't figure out at what point, is it my data? If it's my data and I say I'm giving it to you and that's okay, that should be okay. And it's sometimes it's not okay today. So, and you know, I'm not blaming the government at all in that our rules and regulations, that we have so much change in this world. How do you keep up with the rules and regulations? Still keeping everyone, first we have to keep it safe and we have to keep it private if you want it private. But if you don't, you know, if you're open to, you know, sharing your data, which it clearly looks like on Facebook you are, we have to sort of reconcile that. And as we get into open mHealth, that is a big issue.
Well, I found that most people that are not signing up for my chart, it's the privacy fear.
Oh, interesting.
But they don't understand that they already have an electronic chart.
Right.
And when you sort of point that out to them, that it's already out there, if someone's going to have access to it, they've already got that. This is just a really cool way for you and I to communicate that gets out of my email, gets out of Facebook, and it can be right in the chart where we're documenting it. It just takes more time to explain that.
I think one more comment on the kind of the kick in the pants. I think the ability to open up access to some of this data. So, you know, Medicare data is an example. Being able to open up that data to entrepreneurial groups and kind of redefine the access to that de-identified data to be able to kind of go through and do some interesting things around the study of it, to be able to understand and look for things like fraud, or be able to kind of create new ideas or new models around analysis of fraud, or new analysis around how to be able to kind of build new treatment models. I think that being able to open up that access to more data, to be able to get more people looking at, again, de-identified data, right? So beyond the privacy concern. Being able to open that up will significantly open up to that more entrepreneurial space that I think will create some very interesting new innovation in that space. So.
Great. Mark.
You know, we often had a saying in technology, the future's here, it's just not evenly distributed. In this month's Health Affairs, the CEO of the Permanente Group, Dr. Pearl, actually points out that using remote monitoring technology and MyCharts, Kaiser, Northern California, now is where you want to be in 2020. They have 50% of their visits are now virtual. That's pretty impressive. So it's doable. We have a model in this country that works. They have aligned incentives. The payment issue makes sense to them. But that empowerment is going there. And patients obviously are accepting MyCharts in larger and larger cohorts. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to get to those amazing numbers.